but I have to have now. And then, of course, the last bit of awesome, as always, are our secret links of the day. So if you want to check those out or anything else I shared or talked about today, links, as always, in the description down below.
So if you notice in Today in Awesome, in just about a minute and a half or so, Phil has told you his sponsor and walked through 5 stories or links or ideas, things that he wanted people to know. This is just stuff that he wants to share, things he thinks you need to see if you're in this audience. The ball pit story, really quick, he hits that. The monk walking on water, that was kind of interesting to him. The air race, it was just a few seconds on the screen, but there you go. Then a Call of Duty reference, and then his secret links. That's 5 different things. And he provides more information in the description. People don't often look at the description unless they know to do so, but you check there for links. Phil is all about sharing and giving information that you can look at and follow up later on. He's not going to talk about anything that is not in the description. It's a value of his, and he does it every time. So in just a few minutes now, we're up just now to 3 minutes and 20 seconds. He's managed to talk about 6 different stories and set up the next thing he's talking about, which is poverty.
And then, nation, let's talk about the rich getting richer. The anti-poverty charity Oxfam came out with new research. It's kind of scary. Research saying that the world's wealth owned by the top 1% went from 44% in 2009 to 48% in 2014. Oxfam saying that if this trend continues, by 2016, the top 1% will have more than 50% of the world's wealth. So, are the rich getting richer? Yes, but when you think of rich, who do you think of? I mean, you have people like Warren Buffett, believed to be worth around $58.2 billion back in 2013. Bloomberg at the same time around 33%. Then you have your mishmash of Saudi princes and old white guys smoking cigars, drinking scotch, and petting a cat evilly. Evilly? Yes, evilly. But keep in mind, this is on a global scale. In fact, to be in the world's top 1%, you don't have to have billions of dollars. And it doesn't take into account regular income or average salary. You just, and I use the word just very loosely here, have to be worth more than £500,000. So in the worldwide sense, if you owned your average home in London, you are in the top 1%. And that's why I said I use the word just very loosely, because in fact the top 80 people in the world have the same wealth as the bottom 50%. So 80 people equal 3.5 billion people. And what's crazier is even if you're not in the top 1%, you might still be in the top 20%. The top 20% in the world account for 94.5% of the world's wealth, meaning that the bottom 5.5% in 2014 had an average wealth of $3,851. So depending on your viewpoint, either interesting or scary in a worldwide sense. But this also ties into something in the United States tonight.
So did you pay attention to the way that Phil talked about poverty? He's talking about, are the rich getting richer? What makes up the rich? When we see poverty memes and 1% and Occupy memes on the internet, we usually just see slogans. Phil's not having it. Phil is going to talk about how many people that takes to make up 1%. If you do it on a global scale, it's an insane number of people that are 1% of the population, and how much wealth they might have relative to others. Phil is not taking the simple answer here, and he's challenging his audience to look deeper at the issue. He's got links, but he's also describing the statistics that he's seeing in the report. And then he gets to about 4 minutes and 50 seconds in, where he's leading into the State of the Union.
And that is, the State of the Union will be presented by President Obama. Now, while most of my joy from this event comes from screen capping moments where Boehner or Biden look like they're laughing or bored or about to sleep, it is also about the issues, aka setting up the 2016 election. And that's why it's being reported that a big part of the State of the Union is going to be based around income inequality. To help out those who are believed to have not been given chances before, Obama recently announced, and will most likely bring up again, his new initiative to offer 2 years of tuition-free community college to all students willing to work for it. It's believed believe that this will cost around $60 billion in the next 10 years. We're a nation built on loans, IOUs, and whoopsie daisies. Where is this money coming from? Well, the president says he has a plan to raise $320 billion over the next decade, and that would revolve around taxing the rich. Reports saying the plan to raise taxes would eliminate what advisors called the trust fund loophole, a provision protecting hundreds of billions of dollars in inherited assets from taxation every year. Also, banks with assets greater than $50 billion would be subject to a new fee. The plan would also raise capital gains tax for couples with annual incomes greater than $500,000 to 28% from 23.8%. And since this would generate far more money than is required for the 2-year college plan, the changes would finance tax breaks for middle income earners, including a $500 credit for families in which both spouses work, increased child care and education credits, and incentives to save for retirement.
So Phil, when he's talking about the State of the Union, in just a few seconds, see if you notice this, he's talked about the free community college education costing $60 billion. Did you catch that? That was pretty interesting. Do you know anyone in the left media who's talking about it that way? I don't.
Scott Pelley. Scott Pelley's not going to be talking about the actual costs of free college.
No. So Phil doesn't let them get away with that either. And he goes on to say, well, the president's decided to raise money in these areas, and he shows specifically trust funds, capital gains, things like that. And the president's saying that he's going to take those things and apply them to tax breaks for child care and for investment, incentivizing people to invest, and for, what was the other one? Working families, that sort of thing. And then Phil, after explaining it, tells you this.
And all in all, I think what it boils down to is Obama's not going to be able to get this through now. It's definitely not getting through Congress with the Congress they have now. And for the most part, I think it's political positioning for whoever runs for the Democrats in 2016. But then again, guys, it's 2015. Anything could happen. Maybe both sides could just, put party politics aside and actually work together. That's not true. But it does beg the question, do you think that this is a good idea? Yes, no, do those who have pushed forward ahead and have achieved things help the next generation through, or to higher taxes on those who have accumulated that wealth through, let's say, starting companies, de-incentivize them for doing so? I'd love to know your thoughts.
Political positioning for the Democrats in 2016. We talked about trolling with the president doing YouTube interviews. The president was trolling America with the State of the Union address, and there are several articles that have recognized that, including Jazz Shaw's that we talked about on the Refinery last week. Now, he asks and he finishes with this great bit. He asks the question, do we help the less fortunate by, giving them a hand up, giving them a helping hand here and there? Or does a person who works hard and earns their own money and makes their own way get to keep what they earn? Is it de-incentivizing them to take that stuff away? Do you hear that discussion anywhere in media? No, you don't. But Phil is making sure that he's covering all of those aspects, not just giving you one side, the left spin. He's challenging his audience to think harder about it. He asks for comments about it. He wants that interaction. So he tells them to do that, to comment in the description. So we've been through a Phil video, and we've broken it down for you to see how he handles this one day, one episode, one political event. Again, people don't come to Phil's channel for politics. They didn't come to the channel for that video about trains killing people for politics. But they sure did get some, didn't they?
Absolutely. And again, I mentioned Scott Pelley, but talk about Jon Stewart. Is Jon Stewart ever going to ask that question to his audience? Never. It's not happening. This kind of a discussion doesn't happen in the mainstream media ever. It happens on YouTube. It happens here. It happens because Phil has an audience, and he has, over the course of time, developed these leanings, whatever. And it's still a fair question. He's not putting a hard hammer of libertarianism into his question here. He's asking an open question, and he's expecting an answer from his constituency, from his audience, and they are mostly his peers, and that's another thing. They're mostly my age, his age, and they are giving real answers there. They're giving their real honest opinions, and this is a huge difference from, the kind of left-right yelling at each other partisanship. It's an actual good faith discussion.
And that appeals to people in a younger age that haven't really solidified their ideology and that like to think that they're fair-minded. Approaching him from that direction rather than a lecture or telling people what he thinks and pushing that message down, that is powerful, especially to the crowd that likes YouTube, that likes to talk about opinions and debates and have discussions rather than lectures, rather than indoctrination. So I was listening to Saturday Night Cigar Lounge this past weekend, and the host Taylor was talking about communicating with younger demographics and the way that the State of the Union was received and everything. And some folks that were in the chat were saying that we need to educate the youth, the younger voters, and tell them how they're wrong and explain to them why, say the president's policies don't work. And I agree. We do need to educate people. We do need to teach them, better grasp of economics and whatever. And the school system has failed them miserably and things like that. But you can't do that if you're not in the classroom. And YouTube is one giant classroom.
How can you expect any change to be made as far as the youth demographic if you don't talk to the youth? And this is where you do it. I mean, college campuses are fine, but you don't get invited to college campuses if you are a conservative. If you go on YouTube, the barriers for entry are not so high. I mean, they are not. You don't have to worry about YouTube saying, "Oh no, your opinion is too controversial for us, so we don't want you here." Or, there are people who are going to protest you, and we don't want to pay for the extra security to, make sure that you don't get pelted with glitter bombs or whatever. It's a environment where real discussion can be had, where you can actually have a meaningful interaction with people. And if we look at this, look down our nose at this format, if we look down our nose at the people who, pay attention to and who live on YouTube and who have multiple subscriptions to, many, many channels, it's not only is it not going to win us votes, but it's going to lose us votes real quick because we're not in the area where these people learn about the world. We're not participating in the media that they pay attention to.
Right. Just to sum up a couple of things that I know we want to reiterate, that YouTube is built by people who are building communities of trust relationships, the interpersonal business plus the regularity of content, and they begin to trust the content providers. And that's a powerful relationship. It's its own fan base, just even more intimate than following a celebrity that you like. It's much more intimate and interactive, and that's powerful. At the same time, these people who do YouTube well, that we've talked about, they're small business people. They understand and get the burdens that a small business owner would deal with. People that have views in the millions like that on a regular basis, there's money coming in that they must deal with. There are production values and costs and things like that they have to pay attention to. They're building their own businesses.
On that note, I mean, I have a really quick story there. I subscribe to Rocket Jump, which is a sort of they do special effects work. Freddie Wong and Brian, I can't think of his last name, but they have some behind the scenes stuff from, they do their shoots and then they take behind the scenes video, which is very interesting and adds to that, sort of level of interaction with these people. And he's complaining about the fact that they got thrown out of an area in California. Cops came by and threw them out because they didn't have a permit for for filming in that area. I mean, right there you go. They didn't have a permit for filming in a place that it wasn't, you know, it was open property. It was public space. They didn't have a permit, so they couldn't film.
There's an angle for smaller, limited government right there.
Absolutely, and it's the way that these sort of things occur, and it happens very naturally.